Hi lovers, welcome to day 20 of Vlogtober. Today I'm going to be sharing my scary story time of when I was around 7 years old and how to escape a burning building. It was June 1999, around 8 or 9 p.m., and it was the last day of kindergarten. We had just got home from a celebration. My brother and I had just gone to bed, and my mom was in the living room winding down. I remember trying to doze off to sleep, but my brother kept me awake because he kept saying he smelled barbecue. Luckily, he did not listen to me, as younger brothers usually don't, and went out into the living room and began telling my mom that he smelled the barbecue. My mom was also trying to dismiss him, bribing him that if he went to bed, he'd get barbecue the following day. She and I were tired, and we were not in the mood for his antics or barbecue. Mind you, we lived on the second floor of a 2-story apartment complex. She started to smell it too, and after hearing all the commotion, I went out into the living room, puzzled as to why everyone cared so much about the so-called barbecue smell. My mom was kind of wondering now too, like, it's 9 p.m., who's cooking barbecue? After she opened the sliding door, she heard people screaming outside and started smelling the so-called barbecue as well. And we were all kind of just staring at each other like, what's going on? My mom suddenly ran to our front door and touched it. She later told me it was so hot. She realized what was happening and knew we had to get out as soon as possible. There was absolutely no way we would be able to escape from the balcony. So she opened the front door and looked down the hallway both ways. We lived in the middle apartment of a long hallway, and due to the black smoke, we were unable to exit either side of the hallway. There was smoke, and lots of it. She immediately shut the door, but the smoke had already started creeping into our apartment through the cracks. She told us to stay outside and ran to the bathroom. When she came back, she had wet washcloths and told us to hold them up to our nose. It was to prevent any more smoke getting into our lungs. She shut the balcony sliding door behind her and looked around outside for any sign of help. There was a fire truck at the end of the alleyway. She started screaming for help, but no one heard us. My brother and I were screaming and crying hysterically. We were all shouting for help. The fire trucks were too far away to hear us. I guess they were trying to get people out from the start of the alleyway first. All the other buildings around us and further down the driveway had people shouting for help as well. Being only 7 years old and probably 4 feet tall, I couldn't see over our balcony fence. But later on, my mom told us it looked like hell. People were jumping from their 2-story balconies, some breaking legs doing so, but rather a broken leg than dying in a burning building, right? Speaking of dying, we lived next to this family. There lived grandparents, parents, and a baby. I guess everything happened so fast. The mom was in the shower and the baby was on the couch when this was all happening. And from my understanding, the grandma banged on the door to tell her to get out, but I guess the running water drowned out her voice. And when the firefighters went inside after the fire was taken out, they found the 2 burnt bodies on the bed. The mom was holding the baby while she sat on the bed. We can all say, the grandma should have grabbed the baby, or she should have done this or that. But honestly, being in a horrific situation like that, you don't know what you actually would or would not do until it's too late. So no one should blame anyone. As we screamed for help on the balcony, I started thinking to myself, is this how I die? As a 7-year-old, I didn't really think about the future. It was usually just playing tag or Barbies, going to Chuck E. Cheese, and fighting with my younger brother. But right then and there, I actually thought I had no future, and that we were going to die. And then, literally out of nowhere, this human, all I can remember was that they were wearing a baseball cap, and it was completely covering their face. This person stood on a 7-foot-tall picket fence that covered our downstairs neighbor's balcony, and told my mom to hand him my brother and I. My mom didn't think twice and told us to go to the person that was standing on the fence because he was there to help us. My brother and I started crying even louder, screaming, "No, we're not leaving you." She kind of pushed us toward this person and he just grabbed us one by one and put us down onto the ground. I honestly have no idea how he did it. And after asking around, no one saw how my brother and I got onto the ground. When my feet touched the ground, I ran towards another neighbor who was standing in the car lot. I looked back at my mom and the person was gone. Till this day, we call him our angel. Later on, my mom had told us that after this angel set my brother and I down, he told my mom to grab his hand. But she said she would wait for the fire truck ladder because it was finally making its way towards our balcony. I don't know how long my brother and I were down there looking up at my mom, screaming and crying, waiting for her to reunite with us. But I do remember our neighbor trying to calm us down, saying it would be all right, that the firefighters were getting our mom and we'd be able to hug her very soon. After what felt like a lifetime, especially as a 7-year-old with no distinction of time passing, my mom was finally climbing down the ladder. My brother and I ran up to her, still crying, still scared, and now starting to feel sick. During the waiting period on our balcony, I inhaled too much smoke. I started coughing and wheezing and felt really short of breath. My mom took me to the paramedics who were on the front lawn outside the complex, and I was given oxygen until I could breathe again. After we had all settled from crying and fearing for our lives, my mom realized we didn't have the car keys, so she had one of her friends come pick us up. We stayed with her friend for a few nights before going to our dad's. My mom needed to go back to the apartment to see if she could gather anything that had not been destroyed by fire, smoke, or soot, which is that grimy stuff fire smoke leaves traces of. She got what she could, including this doll that I'll show a picture of I had as a baby. When she found a place for us to move into, my brother and I went back to live with my mom. We're so blessed and grateful for our angel who helped us, and we'll never forget them. And of course, we're blessed and grateful that we still have each other. We hardly ever talk about that tragic night, but when it does come up, our emotions get the best of us, naturally. Sometimes I get really anxious when I randomly smell smoke, like when I can smell it, but I can't see where it's coming from. But I'm okay if I'm at, like, say, a bonfire or this fireplace here. I know where the fire is, so that assures me that I'm okay, if that makes sense. Okay, so that's the end of my scary story, but here's what the LA Times said. Titled, "Woman, Son Found Dead at Fire Scene" by Eleanor Yang and Lisa Richardson, June 20, 1999. Garden Grove. The bodies of a young mother and her son were discovered early Saturday in the charred remains of a Garden Grove apartment complex, where a fast-moving fire forced more than a dozen terrified residents to leap for safety from their second-story balconies. Investigators spent the day trying to determine what sparked the blaze, which caused more than $2 million in damage to the 61-unit Crown Villa apartments on Hazard Avenue. Residents of the apartment where the fire began blamed a faulty dishwasher that they said had recently been repaired. 9 residents were injured during the Friday night fire, most of them suffering sprains or fractured bones from jumping the 10 to 12 feet from their second-story apartments to the ground. The first firefighters at the scene saw flames shooting from windows and people screaming and dangling from their balconies. But 2 residents, No Fan, 28, and her son Rick Pham, 2, could not escape the burning apartment they shared with Pham's mother. Phan was taking a shower when the blaze began and did not have time to get dressed, said her mother, Loc Lu. The young boy was lying on the couch at the time and drinking from a bottle. Lu said she jumped from the balcony minutes before the smoke and flames became unbearable, injuring her wrist and ankle in the fall. "I was shocked, scared, nervous," Lu, 56, said through an interpreter Saturday as she returned to the apartment. She searched for any belongings but found none. Friends and neighbors described Phan as a dedicated mother. "She was always walking around with her baby. He was her life," said Carol Brunetti, who lived a few doors away. It took 65 firefighters 1 hour to contain the blaze. Officials said the fire would have spread less quickly if residents had closed their doors after escaping. Many apartments where the doors were closed sustained minor damage compared with those where the doors were left open, said Captain David Barlag of the Garden Grove Fire Department. The apartment complex appeared to be up to code specifications, Barlag said. Because it was built 30 years ago, it was not equipped with a sprinkler system, which officials said could have slowed the fire. Mohammed Iqbal, who lived in the apartment where the fire began, stood outside the ruined building Saturday afternoon, trying to come to terms with the tragedy. I feel terrible, Iqbal said. I feel bad for the other families. When you're living in a complex, all of us are like family. The family noticed smoke coming from the dishwasher around 8:30 p.m. Friday and ran out the apartment. One family member then pounded on a neighbor's door yelling, "There's a fire! People, get out!" he said. I've included a link to the LA Times article in my description below. Leave your questions and comments and don't forget to like this video. Love you all to the end. Ciao!